crazy.
Welcome to New Stripe City, a YouTube channel for diehard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie, and I have a special guest with me here today, my boy JazzziTV. That's J-A, 3 Z's and the I-T-V. He's a YouTuber. You guys, I'm sure, know of him, know of his work. If you haven't, be sure to subscribe. Jazzy, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm good, man. How are you, New Stripe?
I'm doing all right, man. Of course, obviously, as fans, we could be doing better. But I
Of
feel
course.
like I'm in a good mood because I'm connecting with one of my fellow YouTubers,
There you
and I'm
go.
glad that we can make this happen. So I'm kind of giddy.
Exactly. Exactly.
So my first question for you is: I watch your videos and I see how
Mhm.
passionate you are. When did you become a Bengals fan?
So it's kind of crazy because my dad we were born and raised in Texas. I've lived in Texas my whole life. My mom's born and raised in New Orleans, but she moved to Texas when she was in high school. So she's a diehard Saints fan. She's got her tattoo of the Saints, Fleur de Lis. My dad's got his Cowboys tattoo. So I went to a lot of Cowboys games with my dad as a kid, and obviously I was wearing Cowboys gear. I'm not gonna lie, because I was young,
Right,
and I've played football my whole life, and you know when I got to the age where I really understood the NFL and watched it, like around age 8 or 9, I started watching like particular players according to like the position I was playing. So like I was playing receiver in like youth league, so I'd watch a lot of receivers, and I was just very intrigued by Chad Johnson. I mean, he had his moments. Everybody gets like heated and upset, and he got cocky here and there. But I loved the way that he was so goofy, but at the same time he loved to play the game. I mean, he
right.
just wanted to be on the field ultimately, and some people view him as that cocky guy, and some people don't. And so I just really adapted to him, and my dad actually bought me a Chad Johnson jersey when I was 9 for my birthday, and since then just die hard, just till this day. I still have the jersey my dad bought me. It's like all worn off and stuff from
Nice.
school, and
Right,
I want to frame it and keep it's like a youth large. I mean, it's
right.
crazy. And so when I was 16, my dad's got a Cowboys helmet on his calf that he got tattooed, and he lived in Missouri at the time, and he asked me, we were like down in Branson, Missouri, and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "I know you love your Bengals." He's like, "You want to get your first tattoo right now?" Because we have the same exact name. I'm a junior,
Right.
so
That's what's up.
to carry on like the legacy, he's like, "Do you want to get the Bengals helmet tattooed on your calf?" He said, "I'll pay for it. Your first tattoo." He said, "We'll be matching," and I said, "Let's do it." And
Do
so
it.
I got it, and then ever since then, I've had it on my calf, and I've gotten so many questions living in Texas. I mean,
Right.
one of the best questions that is just beyond me, and it's so funny, is I walk into stores, I got shorts on or whatever, and I see people look at my calf, and they literally ask me, "Are you a Bengals fan?" And I'm just like, you already know the answer. Like, if you know what that helmet stands for, like, I
Right.
get maybe they think it could stand for something else, but that
Right.
just cracks me up. They always ask me, and it brings up a lot of conversation. And some people, obviously, a lot of my guy friends, and a lot of my bros, and some people are like, "Oh, I would never do that." But to me, I don't care what people think, and
Right.
it's just something that I'll live by. And the biggest question people have is, what happens if they change their helmet and logo? And I always tell people, there's nothing wrong with going with either keeping the OG from, growing up from when I was a fan, keeping that helmet because it means a lot to me, or you can always change it up and cover it up and change the design. I mean, people can do all kinds of stuff, but yeah, so Chad Johnson is literally why I became a Bengals fan. I just started following the team since then, and I loved TJ Husmanzada, that era. That's when I became a fan in that era. Carson Palmer, wasn't the biggest fan of Carson, but
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Carson, and then Chris Henry and all that, all those good people, man. So that's how I became a fan, and it's ironic, it's crazy, and I actually wore number 85 all through middle school and high school football just because of Chad Johnson. So it's awesome.
That's super dope, bro. I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear that for sure. Chad was definitely, I think, a legend and a guy that made the Bengals kind of stick out from a worldwide perspective, right? I think that he kind of took the Bengals and catapulted us to like a national level so that guys like you could see him and say, hey, that guy's pretty cool. He's a great receiver, like you said. A lot of people, like you said, talk down on Chad and say that
Mm-hmm.
He's real cocky. The one thing that I liked about Chad is that he actually backed it up. So he would go
Yeah.
out and talk trash
Yeah.
about guys, but then he would also go out and back it up with his play. And I just feel like he brought the culture of the Bengals to mainstream. He made them a team that people were actually excited about. You talk about those years with Carson Palmer and
Mm-hmm.
TJ Houshmandzadeh. Those were years where the Bengals were one of the top flight offenses in the NFL. It was
Oh
like
yeah.
when I talk to people who aren't Bengals fans, the first thing that they say is the Bengals always have good wide receivers. They always have a good offense.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, we really have had some of the top receivers come through here. But outside of that, I like that you also said that you were a receiver in high school. I actually was a receiver as well.
Yeah, I
I was a slot
actually,
receiver.
yeah, I played receiver, in middle school and high school, and actually going into senior year, I played receiver my whole life. They're looking at me because my biggest role was I didn't care if I was scoring a bunch of touchdowns. I think I scored maybe one or two in my whole high school career. I'm more of like a possession catcher. I wasn't fast. Like,
Right.
I mean, I was gonna get caught from behind. I can't. I don't have no 40-inch vertical.
Right. I
I'm
don't.
just
I don't
yeah,
think anybody does really.
and I had no issues blocking for my running back. So they would tell the running backs run to Stewart's side because he's your best blocking wide receiver. So senior year they actually moved me to tight end, and I
Okay.
was in a 3-point stance, and I was like, man, y'all gonna move me to tight end.
Right.
But it's all good. It worked out. I had fun, and it was just so different. But yeah, no, I wore 85 for that man, and I never will regret it. I mean, I love his personality, man. I think he has like one of the, and another thing that I, touch on is he kind of, in my eyes, started, you know, kind of the celebration
Right.
era where he started bringing in some like unique celebrations, and then like people started following through, like where it's not them being cocky, it's just you're celebrating, man. When you score, you're happy. Like now, I do admit some celebrations are over the top,
Right.
but at the same time, you put yourself in their shoes. It's I mean, if I scored a touchdown and played in the NFL, I'm pretty sure I would want to celebrate too.
Right.
So
Right.
and that's what I think brought me into him even more, is because you see that personality of him, and like he didn't really care what people thought about him. He just was there to play and play the best he could, and that's how I kind of like live my life. I don't. People can smack talk you all you want, but at the end of the day, you got your friends and family that are the closest to you, and that's what matters. And friends, obviously. Loyal fans here on YouTube. I love them to death. That, and sometimes we may not always agree, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna dislike you.
Right. Exactly.
Everybody's got their own opinion.
Right. Gotcha. Gotcha.
So
So we talked about Chad. Obviously, Chad is your favorite former Bengal.
yeah,
Who's your favorite current Bengal right now on this team?
that's a tough question. Because I've liked AJ Green ever since he came out of Georgia, and I feel like a lot of it is that connection with being a receiver. My life growing up and stuff, but I have to admit, as much as some people may not like it, I love Andy Dalton. I just because being from Texas, I watched him play at TCU. He won. I saw him playing his high school championship game at Katy his senior year at Cowboy Stadium. So it's like I feel like there's such a connection. He's from Texas. You got to root for your hometown, man. I mean, he doesn't live too far from me, and
Right.
he's literally the nicest guy in the world.
Right.
But I was a big Tyler Eifert fan as well. But I'd have to say Andy Dalton is probably my favorite, just because I've met him, and like you know, but him and AJ are pretty. I mean, honestly, it's hard to choose between the two because they remind me a lot of each other. Like they go out and play their game, and
Right.
they're very, very, very humble. I mean, AJ Green, it takes like everything out of him to get him to even like say a cuss word or snap on like what the coaching staff's doing wrong. Like he literally just wants to play and win. That's it.
Right.
And that's why I love reading articles about him. About him. People think he's gonna leave, and he was like, "No, I'm here to stay." Like they drafted me, and
Right.
we don't really know what is true, what is not true, but going based off his personality, obviously everybody in the Houday Nation should believe him, and I really think he would respect that because he's never shown any kind of signs that he'd be like, oh, I'm out of here. We're not winning. Peace.
Right.
So I'd have to say AJ Green and Andy Dalton probably.
I can see Andy Dalton, especially with you being from Texas, like
Yeah.
especially with us talking about everything, the fact that he's from Katy out there. I can definitely see that. When you saw him play, I guess in high school, what was it like seeing Andy Dalton play in high school? Was it different than it is now? Was it like a guy that
Yeah.
everyone loved?
Yeah, you know what? Obviously, he was a little bit smaller. Well, he looked smaller at least. I think. And so, watching him play, I really didn't know much about him. And and then he went to TCU, and so obviously TCU games are played everywhere around where I live, all the Texas teams. So I watch some TCU games. I see this quarterback. I'm like, wow, he's got a pretty good attitude. Like okay, I'm watching him. And then the draft comes along, and then we take AJ Green, and then second round we take Andy Dalton. I'm like, wow, wow,
Right,
we took the Texas boy.
right,
And the best part about it is I see AJ Green gets frustrated with Andy Dalton sometimes. He overthrows him, and sometimes I'm sure AJ may run the wrong route or may think like he's going to think differently. But the ultimate thing is like people put a lot of blame on Andy Dalton, but they came into this league together. They've been together their whole career, so they've obviously had so many opportunities to work together.
right.
So that's honestly, that's why Andy Dalton, AJ Green. I just think that they're, I like the humble. I like all that kind of stuff, and they just want to play.
Right, definitely guys that came in with high character marks, especially when you talk about us kind of having a little bit of a smudge on our character marks just from that early stage of Marvin Lewis's career where we kind of had, kind of the bad boy kind of
Yeah,
perception nationally. And it was crazy because even after we had Andy and drafted AJ, that still lasted for a little bit longer than it should have, but they definitely
yeah,
help change that narrative for sure, and they're great people. So
yeah, 100%.
obviously you do a lot of live streams,
Mm-hmm.
and I love the passion, and I love watching because I want to see what your reaction is gonna be. What do you
uh,
think your personal favorite like live stream moment would be for you?
You know, that's tough. Because obviously a lot of times watching the game live stream and, a lot of it is a blur because, you have so many emotions rambling. But I think one of my favorite moments this year was that Falcons game
Nice,
because
yeah,
that fourth quarter, I mean, anybody who watched my live stream, I literally was just like wanted to yank my hair out, but at the same time, I was literally going crazy, jumping up and down. I'm
right,
screaming, yelling. I'm like, whoa! And then we
right,
just end up winning the game. And it's just I loved that it was a great game, and the Bucks game. That was another stream where I was like, okay, like it's back and forth, and it's just a lot of fun. But I think a
right,
lot of definitely the Falcons game is probably my favorite because a lot of that's where it started, and people actually started coming in, and I wasn't really expecting that many people coming in, and people
right,
actually being like okay, like thank you for commentating it as best you can because I can't watch the game, and it's nice
right,
seeing all these people from different states and stuff or different even countries what they say, and so it's definitely a lot of fun. The Falcons game for sure, and I think the first time I don't remember what game it was. The first stream I painted my face was also my favorite because people were literally they were just like what, and I was like yeah I painted it and let's I'm ready to rock and
let's
roll.
go, right,
So yeah, no, that live streaming is great. It's definitely hard to, play by play, but I do the best I can by myself and read comments and interact with them and just give them the best I can. And I appreciate everybody that goes in there and comments, and even people that are the team we're playing. They come in there and they're like, "Dude, thank you so much. I can't even watch the game." And so I'm like,
right,
"No problem. Like much respect. You're in here watching. Like good luck to your team."
right,
So
definitely,
yeah.
definitely. So my thing is, a lot of our fans right now, obviously with the way that the season is going, a lot of them are kind of depressed now. They're kind of jaded. Not too much positive thoughts or positive energy is really coming out of Who Dey Nation. But one thing I noticed is that, and I've been guilty of it too. I've been negative sometimes on here,
Mm.
but one thing that I feel like I never see from your side is any negativity, and I respect how positive that you stay. And I'm not saying that
Yeah.
there's anything wrong with that at all. I just
Yeah.
want to know, how do you remain so positive? Just because we've been through so much as a fan base, I guess, and through all the letdowns and through all the frustrations, how do you remain so positive?
Yeah, it's definitely tougher than what you think. The way I think of it is, and I've told people 100 times, is you can get as frustrated as you want. And of course, I get frustrated at games. I get frustrated at stuff we're doing. I feel like, sometimes I feel like, man, if I was coaching this team, I could coach it way better. Okay, but in all reality, that's probably not the case. Like, that's just my opinion. And my thing is, this team's not going anywhere. Like, as an organization, yes, players may come and go next season, coaches may come and go each year, but we still have to watch our team next season. So there's no point to literally just give up on them and bring out the bags, the bungles, all that stuff. Let people hate all they want and say, "Oh, you guys haven't won a playoff game in 28 years, blah blah blah."
Right.
That's fine, because what they don't understand is the time's coming. And you can say that every year that it's going to be this year, but why not stay positive, and why not be believe in your team? And that's why I always say the B, man. It's not only for the Bengals, it's for believe.
Right.
And that's why I tell people, I think, I really feel like some positive changes are going to come in this organization and really, make some people happy. But I get the frustration. I haven't been alive to see a playoff win my whole life, and I almost saw one against the Steelers.
Right.
And that was a tough game to watch and tough game to swallow, because we should have won that game. But you got to let it go, because we can't change the past. And so I just try to remain positive, also because I want to help, keep other Bengals fans positive. Whether I have, some kids that watch me could be younger.
Right.
They could be older than me. They could be my age. And I feel like a lot of times they watch my videos, that they see, okay, this guy, he's being positive, man.
Right.
He's telling us stuff like, let's look forward to this, or let's believe in this. And a lot of times they're like, man, watching your video, like, definitely keeps me positive, man. Like, we got this. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is like, is not only help, myself stay positive, but help other people, because I don't want them to go down on the team, or, be down on the team and just give up being a fan, man. Because if you're going to be a diehard fan, like, you're going to go through struggles, man. Just like, look at, the Patriots, for instance, they've been good for a lot of years, but their time's probably coming where they're just going to for it could, I mean, even if it's only 3 years, but it's going to come for everybody.
Right.
So I just stay optimistic. And if you love your team, I mean, you love your team. And, you have your hard times, you have your good times. But at the end of the day, you have to stay positive and just keep believing in, because your time will come, man.
Right.
It will. It happens.
Right.
So I just tell people, don't give up. Like, literally, you don't give up in life when that's tough. So why would you give up on your team that you love to death, day in and
Exactly.
day out? Don't give up on them.
Totally agree, man. I think that's what kind of separates the diehard Bengals fans from some of the other fan bases, such as like the Patriots or the Steelers,
Hmm.
because we've been through so much that we still hang on to the hope that this team can turn it around. And I think that, in my respects, and even with Browns fans, even though I, make fun of the Browns and all of that, I
Yeah.
respect their fans because they stuck around when it was bad. When I started becoming a Bengals fan, I actually started off when we were like horrible. Like it was
Hmm.
probably like 99, 2000. Uh, we had horrible coaches, horrible quarterbacks. There was always a revolving door at the quarterback position, whether it was Gus Farrat, Achilles Smith. And then I remember like right before Carson Palmer came in, we ended up getting John Kitna and we got Marvin Lewis. And that first
Yeah.
year we went 8-8, and it was like we won the Super Bowl because I was so used to us winning, 2 and 3 games, and
Oh, yeah.
just being able to witness this team start from the bottom and build up was one of, I guess, the most rewarding feelings that I ever had as a fan because
Hmm.
there were people that lived in Cincinnati um, that talked trash about the Bengals. Like you had people that actually watched the games, and then you had people who had actually lived there and built up a hatred against the Bengals, and they would say, "Why are you watching the games? Why are you, supporting this team? You know how
Yeah.
Mike Brown is, all of that." And so it felt good those years where, like 2005 and 2009, where we had success, and then of course with the Andy Dalton and AJ Green era having that success, it felt good to stick by the team and still have that success. So I think that that's what separates
Oh
us
yeah,
from other fans, and I think we're diehard fans.
for sure.
One thing I want to get your thoughts on is
Hmm.
the injuries that we had. Obviously, me and you were very optimistic coming into the season, but
Yeah,
what effect do you think that the injuries had on this season?
I think it had a huge effect, man. And I'm not one to a lot of people will be like, injuries happen. You can't, a lot of people blame, okay, our whole team's hurt. That's why we suck. No, I'm not one to do that. Like, yeah, we've had a lot of key players hurt this year, and we have a lot of players on IR. But at the same time, that's sometimes how it happens. That's how the NFL works. That's how football works. That's how every sport works. It's the next man up. So you got to stay optimistic. But I think it's, hurt the organization as a whole because I think right when, AJ Green went out, Andy Dalton goes out, Tyler Eifert goes out, all these people go out. Some fans already, boom, we're done. We're done. And I think that a lot of people have to understand is that's not necessarily always the case. I mean, you look at, the Eagles, last year with Nick Foles, like now he's a great backup quarterback to have, but that's not their franchise quarterback. And look, he went all the way to the Super Bowl, and I wouldn't say they had like a Patriots style like a triple plus team. I mean, no. I mean,
Right,
they weren't, they were good, but they weren't the best team ever. They like shocked a lot of people. So, but injuries definitely hurt, man. I know that a lot of people give up quick, and I just, it stinks because you don't want to see anybody injured. But at the end of the day, I give a lot of credit, to people like AJ Green and, people who tried to fight through it and tried to play, and he couldn't, man. And that was like one of the saddest things to see because, you
right,
don't want to, he's frustrated. He's he's in tears because he wants to be out there so bad,
right,
but and so that just it really stinks and stuff and so it's just it's rough, but at the same time it's like, okay, now we can see like, who are some young guys that are going to be with this team for a while or could be for the team for a while. They're going to make a name for themselves. Like obviously Tyler Boyd was already making a name for himself, but we all know how he can play now.
right,
John Ross has had his good and bad times, but we can see what he can do, and I feel like he can do more. But it's just, it's like, when's he? I want him to get that breakout. CJ Uzama as a tight end, I think he blocks phenomenally well, and
right,
he actually catches some pretty good balls. He's a big guy.
right,
And so I just think people, it's good. And then obviously you got Jesse Bates, you got Sean Williams, who stepped up very big this year.
right,
And, it all relies on that. And
right,
so, but I do think injuries hurt us a lot. But I wouldn't blame it on the season. I wouldn't say that's not why we're 5-8. I never would blame it all on injuries, but it does hurt a lot, obviously, with 15 players on IR. I mean, that goes a long way. I mean, and people have been banged up here and there that are still, playing. And, you do throw some guys in there that haven't played very often, and they've only practiced. But then again, people don't realize that these people that are jumping in, like playing, cornerback like Tony McRae. I mean, you have to realize he's going against Tyler Boyd, John Ross, and AJ Green in practice all the time.
right,
But people don't realize that he's not going against number two receivers. I mean,
right,
he's going against the number ones half the time, especially if they think he's gonna, play a lot on Sunday. They're not just gonna throw him out there like, oh, you go over there with the practice squad people. No,
right.
that's not what they do. They want to win, obviously. So that's just. But injuries are definitely tough. Yeah, no, it's been rough, and there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's just where we got to get healthy, and that's why I think it was good that AJ Green. It stinks that he went down, but maybe it's better that he has the surgery to get it fully fixed instead of kind of like babying it to heal it. And then what would have happened if we would have come out and won and like went to the playoffs and then he goes down? I
Right.
mean, we've already experienced the playoffs once without him. I mean, it's tough. So I think it's hurt the team a lot, but I think it's also shown a lot of what a lot from people we don't see that much during, normal seasons. Like, okay, like we have some people to look forward to in the future of this organization.
Right.
So,
Right. I totally agree. I think, like you said, injuries just happen in the NFL. You always get a team
mhm.
that gets a whole bunch of injuries. But I think it shows how deep this team is. You look at the Chargers game, they're pretty much at full strength over there, minus Melvin Gordon.
Yeah.
And that was a game that we could have won. Like, we're missing
Hmm.
AJ Green, we're missing Andy Dalton, we're missing Carl Lawson, Tyler Eifert, those guys, and we still were able to compete with those guys. And I think another thing that you said, which is it makes our backups better and we get to see some of these other guys. It totally does that. One guy that comes to mind is Christian Westerman.
Yeah.
Our entire fan base, and including Pro Football Focus, has clamored for this guy to play. He finally gets in last week and he gives up zero pressures. So
Exactly.
things like that happen and kind of
Hmm.
affect the future of this team. Whereas when we get to an off season and we obviously want to help repair this line, that's a guy that could potentially be someone that's a starter for us next year. That's a guy
Yeah.
that could take the guard position, not the right guard, but the left guard, possibly, however they want to do it, whether they
Hmm.
want to put him at right guard or left guard. That could possibly be a need that you take off of your draft board to help in another area, like
Exactly.
linebacker. So we talked about Marvin Lewis. We've talked about kind of the injuries. Another theme of this season has been Marvin Lewis. What are your thoughts on Marvin Lewis? And do
You
you think he
know,
should go ahead?
I it's tough because a lot of people dog on him, and I I do think that he has good intentions to coach, and he has good values. I mean, he's had experience being a defensive coordinator, and he's been under some great, coaches in the past when he was younger. And I do think he has the potential to be good. I just think that his head coaching time is up. I think that he had his run. He did, even if people don't believe it, I think he did what he could. And I just think, like I tell people, it's time for change, man. And it'll be good, and I hope, I wish Marvin the best if he leaves after the season, whether he stays with our organization or goes somewhere else or retires. But I do think, his time's up. It's been a long coaching career, and you just can't coach forever, but he does have good intentions in specific spots. People just don't see it because they just look at the team record and they look at his playoff wins and they look at all this stuff, and but they don't see like the insight. Like you don't see that, okay, maybe he's not that bad of a, they think like everything, coaching problems, issues like play calling, everything is all on him, but it's really not. He can't do all that. I mean, he can have, meetings with the defense and offensive coordinator, but it ultimately also goes to the GM and front office. I mean, it's not only Marvin Lewis. The head coach doesn't make every decision in the organization.
Right,
But I do think his time is up. But I definitely would wish him the best. He's had a long run here, and he's had, a handful of phenomenal players.
right,
And but I just think that change is needed, and it's just, I think he just really, I think he kind of notices too, and really knows that, okay, maybe I need to be in a front office. Maybe I just need to be behind the scenes now. Like, okay, I've had my run, and I get, he held out as long as he could. He probably wanted to win a championship. I don't blame him. I would want to do the same thing if I was a coach.
right,
But and another good thing about Marvin is he's taken a lot of heat from, a lot of people. But if you really listen to him, he blocks a lot of that out. He's very good at that.
right,
And, that's not a bad coach to have. But I can see where people's frustrations are, but we also don't see everything behind the scenes. He might be all like, relaxed in the interview, but how did he handle the players in the locker room? Did he yell at them in the locker room? Did he go over effort? Did he go over all this stuff? Did he get on to them like any coach would? Or
right,
did he sit back and relax? We don't know.
right,
So, but I do think that his time is up, and I'm ready for some change, and like I said, I wish him the best. If he stays with the Bengals organization, he does, and works in the front office. If he doesn't, he doesn't, and hopefully, he lives a happy life, and I feel like he'll always root for us if he works for us or not, and it'll always be nice to have him around. I'm sure we'll honor him at some games and stuff. So,
Right.
you know, whether fans want to boo him or not, at the end of the day, he's your coach. I mean, you can hate your coach just like you might hate some of your players, but at the end of the day, you can't change it. I mean, you got to be somewhat positive towards him.
Right.
So,
Right. So you spoke to, us having to get some change at that head coaching position. Obviously, it's been rumored out there, and we always take national media rumors with a grain of salt, especially when they said that Marvin was leaving last year. What do you think about the narrative that Hugh Jackson could become the coach? Like, what are your thoughts on Hugh Jackson?
you, it's tough because, I've watched Hard Knocks, obviously. So, it was interesting to watch Hard Knocks, but obviously, is he always like that off camera? So, you can't really take in everything you see. But I think I think Hugh Jackson is a great coach too, but I don't think he's head coach potential. I think he's more of, an offensive coordinator spot. He, to me, knows what he's doing and has good intentions. I just think that I feel like with Marvin, I feel like Hugh wanted to change our system a little bit offensively, and maybe they kind of cut him off and didn't let him fully, let me run the offense. I'm the offensive coordinator. And I feel like he kind of wants that opportunity. I just don't think that he's really head coach potential overall. I mean, I think he's a great guy, but I think he can really be an asset to the coaching staff, on the offensive coordinating or quarterbacks coach or something, because as you could tell, him and Andy Dalton had a great, a relationship. Even him and Baker Mayfield had a great relationship. The only reason Baker Mayfield was upset is because he left the team and went to a division rival. Now, granted, he got fired, so I don't see why Baker's that upset,
Right.
but I get it at the same time. But obviously, you can tell if Baker's that upset for Hugh Jackson's short time with Baker Mayfield, they obviously developed a great relationship.
Right.
So he's got his perks. It's just I don't quite think that it's head coach potential. So I
Right.
think that we should definitely look at the market before just jumping right into Hugh just because he's been with the team before.
I'm with you on that because I like Hugh Jackson. I thought that if this were 2015 or I guess 2 years after that, if this were 2017 before he left and went to, I can't actually remember when he left. Did he leave after 2015? He left after 2015.
Yeah, because
So
he spent 2.5 years with the Browns basically.
right. So I was thinking. I remember there was a story that came out that he was supposed to succeed Marvin Lewis as the head coach. He was going to step down. I
Mm-hmm.
think around that time, before he got the stink of the Browns on him, I would have considered him as a head coach. But I think what it signifies to me is if you fire Marvin Lewis or you let Marvin Lewis resign, however you do that,
Yeah,
and Jackson steps up there to the fan base, I feel like that just says we're not changing that much. And like
yeah,
you said, I don't think Hugh right now would give us any confidence that he can go out and be a great head coach. I mean, he
mm-hmm.
did come from the Browns, but the Browns were able to win three games already without him. And I mean, while he was
Yeah,
there, he only won 3 games.
mm-hmm.
So I agree with you there. I definitely want the Bengals to definitely look out there and see who are
Yeah,
some of the guys that would be able to fill those shoes. Me personally, my favorite pick has always been Jim Harbaugh, but
mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how realistic that is. So I don't want to give
Yeah,
people too much false faith. Some people actually hate that because a lot of people that are Bengals fans from Ohio, they're Ohio State fans, and so they hate
yeah,
Jim Harbaugh. But to me, like the way that I look at it, I remember Jim Harbaugh when he was the 49ers coach, how he
mm-hmm.
came in, after coaching Andrew Luck at Stanford, having all that success there, coming into the NFL and taking the 49ers from a laughing stock, to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, why wouldn't you want a guy like that? And it's crazy to me that people give him such a bad rap from being from Michigan, or not being from Michigan, or for coaching Michigan, but
Yeah,
the guy is really from Ohio. So to me, I want us to definitely look out there and possibly even find like a guy like a Sean McVay or a Matt Nagy, one of those guys that are kind of flying under the radar that we could bring in
yeah.
here that could still be a pretty good coach.
Yeah, and I think there's plenty of opportunities to look at, there's a lot of teams with, coaches, defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators that probably would take the opportunity
Right.
to leave if we offered them a position that maybe not a lot of us are educated on them coaching wise because we don't know a lot about them because they're like a defensive coordinator for an NFC South team. You know, we
Right.
probably don't know a whole lot about them, but it's change and you never know how it could turn out. Just like you said with Sean McVay. You literally have no idea how it could turn out. So I definitely think testing the market is the best option, and I really hope they do.
Right.
Because I feel like if they don't and they just kind of throw Hugh in there as head coach, I feel like a lot of people are already going to start off negative. If either fans are already going to be like upset or they're going to be like, this team has no hope whatsoever. And
Right.
it's just already going to be so negative, and it's like we don't need that.
Exactly. I totally agree. I think one thing that gives me some hope, and a lot of people talk about the Bengals don't change, Mike Brown doesn't change. We should expect, Hugh to be the coach. We should expect Marvin to return. For me, I think that they have shown when the fan base gets shaked or people stop showing up to the games, it does affect them.
Oh yeah.
The last hire that I remember, where Mike Brown was super stubborn and wouldn't let him go until the fans stopped showing up to the games. That was the offensive coordinator position when AJ Green and Andy Dalton came in. Before
Mm.
that, we had Bob Bratkowski.
Yeah.
Obviously, he gave us that offense in 2005 that was second in the league, but his offense started to become predictable, and people were just sitting there like, when are we going to get rid of this guy? And it took for that to happen. And when that happened, I remember stories came out that said, the Bengals aren't looking to hire somebody that's already in the NFL. They would like a young mind that can come in with fresh ideas, and put us in a position to make this offense more creative. And that's when they found Jay Gruden. A lot of people forget they went and found Jay Gruden in the Arena Football League. He was coaching
Mm-hmm.
down where I live now in Orlando in the USFL. In the USFL, a funny story behind that is a lot of former Bengals like Odell Thurman and some of the guys that actually played on those 2005
Mm-hmm.
through 2008 teams actually played for Jay Gruden down here in Orlando. And you see how talented he ended up becoming,
Oh
right?
yeah.
He came out here. He was the reason that we picked Andy Dalton. He was the reason we drafted AJ Green. He put them in a great offense. One of the reasons we drafted Gio, and went on to do great things. I mean, he's been the coach of the Redskins. They've been competitive pretty much every year. I
Yeah.
think that's what they need to do. I don't care if it's a guy that we might not be aware of their abilities, but I trust them to make the right decision because they did it
Yeah.
before with Jay Gruden.
Yeah, and a lot of these, people that have not had the opportunity, that's what they've been working for. So obviously, I look at it as if they get that head coaching opportunity, I feel like they're going to go full force and they're going to take it 100% serious and they're going to want to change it around because this could be their one and only shot. I mean, we've seen coaches that get a head coaching job have 2 bad, 3 bad years, and they're never a head coach again.
Right.
I mean, or they have to go to college or they have to go somewhere else. And so it's like if we give somebody that opportunity, they're going to take full advantage of it. And that's what they have to realize.
Right. I agree with you. I think there's only one scenario, Jazzy, and I think all of us can agree with this, where I would want to forego that, and this is never going to happen more than likely, even though they're having a meltdown this season. If the Minnesota Vikings were to let go of Mike Zimmer, I think everybody and Who Dey Nation would want us to immediately get him on a flight and get him in
Mm-hmm.
Cincinnati and have him as the head coach, especially because a lot of our fan base, while he was there, felt like he deserved the opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
become the head coach, especially since he had the tragedy here with his wife passing away, and the
Yeah.
entire city of Cincinnati, not only just the city, but the players and everyone kind
Mm-hmm.
of got around Mike Zimmer, and he was just a guy that I think breeds excellence. So if I doubt that the Minnesota Vikings are
Yeah.
that stupid. They've had 2 down years where they've been claimed to be Super Bowl contenders. I don't think they'll do it, but I think that's the only situation where I think all of us would
Yeah.
be like, yeah, let's
Oh
go,
yeah.
let's go and
Yeah.
get them.
Yeah, no, I've always liked Zimmer, and I hated seeing him and Gruden leave, man. Especially bang bang like that. But Zimmer, man, I think he definitely deserves the opportunity, and I loved having him around. So I would be all for it as well. But like you said, I don't think the Vikings would do that whatsoever because they know what he's capable of.
Right, exactly. I got one last question for you here, and then I'll open it up if you have any questions for me. If the Bengals do get a top 10 pick, where do you see them going, or what position in particular do you think that they should pick? I know it's early.
Yeah, yeah, and that's tough, because you've only seen a couple mock drafts from Todd McShay. He just came out with his first one,
Right,
and that's the thing is we don't even know where we're gonna pick yet. Is it going to be top 10, or is it going to be 11, 12, 13, 14? I mean, there's no telling,
right,
and I think it also has a result of who's still head coach. If is Marvin gone at that time? Do we have a new one? Or is Marvin gone and we're in the process of hiring a new one? I mean, I think that all plays a huge part on who we draft because I don't necessarily think that they would go quarterback first round. I'm going to be honest. And I know a lot of people want Dwayne Haskins, especially because he's from Ohio State. But I don't think we would get a high enough draft pick to get him. And even if we did, I just don't. The way the Bengals draft, I mean, it would be a shock to me, honestly,
right,
because they don't strike as that kind of team that would do that. And every mock, the only two mock drafts I've seen from professional analysts and stuff is Devin White, from LSU linebacker. Now I think he's a stud. I think he'd be great. And honestly, we could use defensive help. And but it's also like, what if we went, offense? Because we could always use maybe some O line help or something. But I look at the top like 10 draft picks that in Todd McShay's mock draft, I think there's only one offensive player. So it's a very defensive heavy draft this year.
right, right,
So that's why I think a lot of people have to understand is yes, I get you want Dwayne Haskins, you want a quarterback, but this is a very, very defensive heavy draft right now.
right,
So if we can take it for instance, Sam Hubbard, that was a huge steal for us to draft.
right.
And I mean, I think he's had a great year this year.
He has.
And so it's like, there's a lot of like little positions I feel like we could fill. And so I just hope we make the right decision. But, I wouldn't be subject against some linebacker help.
Right,
It also helps middle of the field. But it's just the fact of the matter is if we can have, Nick Vigil stay healthy, Preston Brown come back and stay healthy, I think he's a phenomenal player, man. I
right,
love Preston Brown to death. And Vontez, man, if he could just get his head on straight and just play his game and
right,
not worry about the refs and all this stuff and just play your game, play the way we saw you play, 2015, 2016, man. Play like that, Vontez. And people were like, wow, like that's a linebacking core you don't want to mess with. And
right,
so if those people can stay healthy and they plan on bringing Preston Brown back, maybe they don't look at Devin White. Maybe we look at secondary. We always could use secondary help, and we just got Jesse Bates, so that helps a lot too. But I feel like cornerback wise, we could use a little bit of extra help, but it's just tough because who's all out there, and I haven't watched a whole lot of film on a whole lot of guys that are coming to the draft because
right,
not all of them have necessarily declared.
right. Exactly.
So I think right now, I think we should go defense. I don't think offensive lineman, first round is where we should go. I think, spark it up and, kind of change it up, spice it up, man. Now it would be a huge spice up with a quarterback, but spice it up, go like a cornerback or, we've done cornerbacks in the past, maybe a safety. I mean, something, that might spike it up or, there's no telling what we can do. But I think there's so many options and so many ways we could go at it. I
Right,
just it's very tough to tell this early, but I would not be against Devin White, and I've never been against Dwayne Haskins. I just don't think we're gonna get him. I
right.
don't. I just feel like
I
it's too
agree.
early.
It's
I
way
just
too
don't think
early
that
to be
they're.
able to
I
say.
don't think that they're ready to get a new quarterback. I think
Right,
that they would rather test the market or look at quarterbacks that are, possibly we could trade for from different teams or that are getting released and, maybe giving Andy another year chance with AJ Green. I don't know,
Right.
especially AJ going into his final year of his contract. So I think definitely defense, honestly, I think would be huge, especially after the year we've had this year. Yes, a lot of it has to do with injuries, but with that, rank of the worst defense in the league, I mean, that's got to sit heavy on some of these guys. And that's where why not bring in all the help you can? If you can get that stud in the, you know, top 15 picks that you really, these scouts really watch and believe that he can be something like a Sam Hubbard, Jesse Bates, go get it.
Right. I
So,
totally agree with you. I think that the Bengals will make some big changes in terms of possibly walking away from Marvin, but I don't see them doing that and then also moving away from Andy. I think
yeah.
the only scenario that even opens that door, I think, would be like a brand new head coach from somewhere
Mm-hmm.
outside that wants their own guy. But even in that situation, I still think Andy sticks on the team, and I think it
Yeah.
would be kind of like an Alex Smith situation before they
Mm-hmm.
did something like that. I still think that Andy is definitely, like you say, your quarterback next year. And I think when you talk about that top 10 pick, you have to you have to look at how the draft stacks up, and then you have to also consider what you're doing with a top 10 pick, right? So you have to make sure that it's a premium position or a special player. It can
Mm-hmm.
either be one of those two. And I think Devin White, like you said, is a special player. I love our linebacker core too. I'm honestly shocked that it ends up being our weakest unit,
Yeah.
in my opinion, of this entire season. And I don't know if it's because of injuries. I feel like it's a mix of both because you
Mm-hmm.
had Vigil out, and then we were forced to throw guys like Hardy Nickerson in.
Mm-hmm.
Preston Brown, who was basically never injured before, gets plagued with an ankle injury.
Yeah.
Montez Burfict comes back from a PED suspension and just doesn't look like himself at all, gets a hip
Mm-hmm.
injury. I think it just means you have to keep throwing darts on a board, right? And you have to get something that sticks there. And I think a guy like Devin White would still give us something that we haven't had, which is a guy that can uh, drop back in coverage, can be
Mm-hmm.
athletic, can rush off of the edge, has a nose for the ball. One of the things that I like that I saw from Devin White, and the reason I even was hip to him was because all of these guys that we have in the chat, that was the main thing that I kept seeing was Devin White, Devin White.
Mm-hmm.
Even early on in the season, like at the halfway mark, people were just like Devin White. And I think when you look at teams across the league, whether it's I look at some of the top 10 linebackers that have been drafted. You talk about a Luke Kuechly who's from Cincinnati, who the Bengals were high on, but
Yeah.
obviously we were in the 20s that year. We couldn't get him. Or you look at a guy like a Leighton Vander Esch that you've seen, I'm sure, in
Mm-hmm.
Dallas and what he's done to that defense,
Oh
and a
yeah.
guy like Roquan Smith. That's one of the guys that we need. Like that's someone who can have a huge impact on his defense. Another sleeper pick for me would be, like you spoke to earlier, this is a defensive draft. The Bengals have the 32nd ranked run defense in the NFL. What are ways, and I'm sure you know this as a former
Yeah.
football player, there's two main positions that you have to address that affect the run defense, and that's the defensive tackles and
Mm-hmm.
that's the linebackers. I wouldn't be opposed to us getting a third defensive tackle in there that can kind of come in, kind of like a Ryan Glasgow, or
Mm-hmm.
rotate with those guys. That's in a sense a pure run stopper. Like I look at the Washington Redskins, right, and I feel like a lot of the guys that they have on their defensive line are guys that I've wanted the Bengals to take, and guys that have been possible first rounders and second rounders, and they just don't even care. They just keep stacking these guys up back to back so that anytime that they have a rotation, somebody's in there stopping the ball. That would be a dark horse position that I think that we could address too. The most obvious one would be the offensive line, but when you're picking in the top 10, unless you're going to get like a surefire stud right tackle, you really only want to take a left tackle. You really don't want to take
Yeah.
a guard that high. You really don't want to take, obviously, we took a center last year,
Yeah.
but That's not a place where you want to take interior linemen or even marginal right tackles, right?
Hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It's just that the offensive line is definitely tough. I wouldn't say it's a waste in the top 10, picks, but like you said, it's very hit or miss. And I get defensive players can be the same way, but at the same time, defensive players can contribute more. Like you
Right.
said, if we got a D tackle or a linebacker, we have so many veterans on that defense that they can learn from. Carlos Dunlap, Geno Adkins, Vontez Burfict. If Preston Brown comes back, Nick Vigil's not that old, but they have so many people they could learn from.
Right.
And to me, that goes a long way if you're learning from veterans because you see us drafting Sam Hubbard. And you see when he gets his opportunities, he's had some games where he is dangerous. And
Definitely.
I love to see that because he's young and he's only going up from here.
Right.
And a lot of ESPN analysts said that we had a very good draft, and that was a very big steal.
Right.
And you see Jesse Bates too. So anything can happen. So
Right.
adding another, defensive, core or linebacker, I definitely think the run game is huge to stop. And the middle of the field passing game for us just seems to not be there, man. Nobody's ever there. And, a lot of teams struggle with it. And I know it's tough because you're in certain coverages, but we do need somebody, if we did get a linebacker that can guard a tight end or guard a slot receiver for, a good amount of time to run across the field with them. So the quarterback's not going to see him wide open, that he glances, looks somewhere else, or more pass rush because obviously, Carlos Dunlap and Geno Atkins, they really, they're phenomenal players, but we really haven't been the same pass rush team. And I feel like the last season or two, that we were, where we were, talked about 24/7, it's just kind of declined a little bit. And I don't know why that is, but maybe they do need those younger guys to come up and be like, hey, man, if you're not going to step up, like, I'm going to take your spot.
Right.
And so I feel like that kind of boosts them up. And linebacker, Devin White, would that boost Vontez Burfict up? I feel like yeah, because he's like, what if that young kid comes and takes my spot?
Right.
No, I'm not letting that happen. So maybe he'll go back to his old playing self and not worry about all this outside stuff and the refs and everything. Just play your game and
Right.
just play smart.
Right.
So there's many ways to look at it, but I definitely think defense is always a big option for top 10, even top 12 is what we're looking at right now. I think if we drafted today, I think we would be like 11th or 12th,
11.
I think is what it is.
Yep.
So I think there's definitely valuable options right there.
Okay. Um, Once again, guys, if you're just tuning in, make sure that you guys subscribe to Jazzy's page. That's JA, three Z's and ITV. You can find him on YouTube. He's always posting stuff about the Bengals. Jazzy, before we end it here, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, so you said you lived that's how you became a Cincinnati fan, right? You said you lived in Cincinnati before you moved to Orlando, right?
Yes.
Did you grow up there as a kid as well?
Oh yeah. So a funny story about me is I was born and raised in Cincinnati, and
Hmm.
then when I was about, I think probably 5 or 6 or so, my parents got a divorce, and we moved out to California for like 6 years, right? Then my parents got back together, and then we moved back to Cincinnati. So
Hmm.
we moved back to Cincinnati, and when I moved back that time, that's around the time that I started to become a Bengals fan.
Hmm.
That was like, I remember, I think my first jersey, believe it or not, was also a wide receiver jersey, but it was Peter Ward. So I remember the Peter Ward jerseys, and the first game that I actually went to, I didn't realize this until like maybe 3 or 4 years ago because Jeff Hobson said it. I ended up having a teacher there, that the Bengals were like so bad that people were giving away their tickets, right? So she gave
Yeah.
me tickets to the game because she knew that I would watch them, and they had amazing seats, and we were sitting midfield in Paul Brown Stadium, and I happened to be at the game that Corey Dillon actually broke the rushing record. He ran
Oh
for
wow.
278 yards against the
Hmm.
Broncos, and I was at that game, and we actually won that game. Come to find out through Jeb Hobson, that was the first win in Paul Brown Stadium. So I actually
Oh
got to
wow.
witness the first win there,
Yeah.
believe it or not. But through that time, all the way through like high school, I lived there. I played football and all of that. And then when it came time to go to college, that's when I moved down and went to Florida. Spent 4 years there. Worked for 2 years. Went back for grad school for 1 year, and then got offered a job out here in Orlando. So that's where I'm at now.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, yeah. I've been to Florida. I think once or twice. Clearwater. My cousin actually goes to the University of Central Florida.
Oh, dope.
So
Nice.
she loves it out there. She's a sophomore out there, and
Okay, cool.
she's from Texas as well with us. So, but she was ready to get out, go to the beach, and
Right.
she's doing all that Disney stuff. But
Oh, yeah,
yeah, no,
definitely.
it's definitely intriguing to hear. And that's what I also love too is like when I go out in public and people ask me who I'm a fan of. I see people wear jerseys, or I see them here in Texas wear something else, and I'm intrigued to hear your story.
Right.
Why are you a fan? And sometimes they just say, I'm not really an NFL fan of a team. I just like this player. And
Right.
by all means, hey,
Right.
if you like the player, wear it, man, rep it.
Right.
And you just don't have a set team. And so, but some people do, and it's really intriguing to hear people's stories. And the bad part about it is some people come at you, and then they're like, there's no way you could be a Bengals fan. You have no affiliation with Cincinnati, this
Right.
and that and that. But all in all, it's different if you're educated and you actually know about your team. That's
Right.
different. You
Right.
could be unaffiliated with that area,
Right.
and you may not be like a season ticket holder, but you know about the team. So
Right.
I don't see what would be the issue.
Right.
So, but of course, obviously, everybody's gonna say that. So, but yeah, no,
I
it's
mean,
it's definitely it's
to me, it's different though, right? I get what you're saying, and we have to have a talk with our fan base because to me, if you're from a different area and you cheer for the Bengals, it's because you have to be knowledgeable about the Bengals, right? It's not
mhm.
like you're picking, you know, the Patriots
Oh
or
yeah.
the Steelers or hey, if we're talking the NBA, I know sometimes you talk about the NBA. It's not like you're like, oh, I'm a Golden State Warriors fan. It's not
Hmm.
like we have this vast history of us being a super successful team. So I think it's
Hmm.
dope, like that we have so many fans that are from Cincinnati, but also guys that aren't from Cincinnati. And
Yeah.
it always intrigues me, like, man, how did you get into the Bengals?
Hmm.
Because literally, like for the most part, the stereotype is, and that's probably why you get the question so much, is most people think that you have to be from Cincinnati to actually cheer for
Yeah.
us, just because we have such bad luck. So to me, it's actually dope to see how many fans, and I look at it through my chats and all of this, how many fans we have that are actually outside of Cincinnati that support
Yeah.
the team. And a funny story is, a few years ago, the only thing that sucks about it, and I'm sure you have this problem too, is you have to wait until they come to your state or anywhere close by for you to
Hmm.
be able to watch the game. Well, a
Yeah.
cool thing is the Bengals actually came here a few years ago, not to Orlando obviously, but to Jacksonville
Hmm.
for a preseason game. And when I tell you that our fans came out in full force, like we literally kind of like took over their stadium in Jacksonville, and it's like mind blowing because it's like whenever I see anyone down here or outside of Cincinnati that's a Bengals fan, it's like you automatically have that connection, and it's like your mind is just blown. And believe it or not, there are a lot of Bengals fans because I've lived in North Florida and Central
Hmm.
Florida. There are a lot of Bengals fans down here in Florida. Like, believe it or not, like I remember I was driving out one day, and I think I was headed to get some lunch, going down the main road, and on this lady's tag, I see a Bengal sticker. And so I'm like, I initially go into like high gear and start speeding up just to get next to her,
Yeah.
just to beat my horn. And I'm like, who they? And like she yelled who they to me. And like anytime I see any Bengals fans or
Oh
anytime
yeah.
I'm like just draped up in this, because I'll go to the grocery store and my stuff and all of that. I'll
Oh yeah.
always get someone that's a fan that's just like who they. Now the worst on the flip side of that, the worst situation, believe it or not, is when I have to deal with Steelers fans, because Steelers fans are everywhere. Like they're just literally everywhere. It was 1 year. I think this was still when we had Carson Palmer, and we lost. And I'm literally leaving out of Buffalo Wild Wings. It's been a horrible game. because we've once again lost to the Steelers. I'm out walking on the sidewalk
Mm-hmm.
to my car, man, and this guy pulls up to me, rolls down the window, and says, "We Day." I was so frustrated, so frustrated.
Yeah, no, it's. I'll be honest. Living here my whole life in the area I've lived in, I went off to college, for like a semester and a half, and then I had to move back home due to back surgery. So,
Right,
going off 3 hours away, still in Texas, I at a university, Texas A&M. I mean, you're thinking a town with like 80,000 people, not one single Bengals fan I saw, not one. And then living in this area all my life, I'm 23 now.
right.
I think I've only seen like one or two Bengals fans. It's insane. And I don't know if it's just because I'm missing them the way I'm going, but it's just, I think
No,
it's just,
I definitely understand what
yeah.
you're saying because I went on an interview one time and it was in Chicago, and the weird thing is on the way back they flew me out to Texas and then flew me back to Florida, which was
Mm-hmm.
weird. I was like, I don't know how this makes sense, but whatever. Um, and as soon as you land there, I'm sure you've seen this at Fort Worth. There's the Dallas Star. Like as soon as you fly down, and it's like, man. As soon as I got there, it was like a sea of Cowboys fans. I saw
Oh,
guys with
yeah.
their hats. Everybody had on jerseys. So I totally understand, man. The Cowboys are just a team where they're like, to me, like I don't understand why so many people hate them. I don't dislike them like I do like the
Mm-hmm.
Steelers or Patriots, but they're like one of those nostalgic teams that were so good in the 90s, and I think when I think about them, they're like the 90s version of like the Chicago Bulls, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
like everybody loved that team, and so you have these offshoots of people that were, if you were from Texas, especially before the Texans were there, you had to be like a Cowboys
Oh,
fan.
yeah.
But not even just that. If you just like the Cowboys on a national scale, you were with the Cowboys. So I think everybody can always say that, even outside of, even here in Florida, I meet Cowboys fans all the time. So I could just imagine with that
Yeah.
being in your backyard, everybody being a
Oh, yeah.
Cowboys fan. But that to me scores more points for you though, my friend. You could
Yeah,
have
no.
easily have been like, hey, I'm just gonna cheer for the Cowboys.
Yeah, yeah. I see Cowboys fans everywhere I go. Most of my friends are Cowboys fans, and I'll definitely walk in the grocery store head to toe with all my
Right.
Bengals gear on, my tattoo out, my
Respect.
jersey on, game day. So I love going with my face painted, and people are like, "What?" And so
Right.
I love it because it's so intriguing, because people are looking and like, "Wow, this guy's a Bengal." Like, wow, he's
Yeah,
a Bengals
I
fan.
get it.
So
I
I'm just
get that
like,
too, man. I get it too. It's just like, wow, you actually, wow, what do you? Every time I go to work, man. Every time I go to work, it's just like, what are the Bengals doing? How are you cheering for this team? You guys still have Marvin Lewis. I go through it on a daily basis, but I think that makes us tougher as fans for sure.
yeah, yeah, no, and that's what telling people all the time is it's not going to happen forever. Obviously the playoff streak will be broken, and you just have to believe every year because every year is a new year. That's why I always say new era. I mean change. There's always something new to be done, and it's going to happen. And when that time happens, we're all going to reunite. We're all going to unite together and be so ecstatic. And then we're going to get that opportunity one year to make a Super Bowl run and maybe get there and win it, or get there and maybe fall short. But
Right,
it's the fact that we make that run, and
right,
it just I think would change the audacity of so many fans. And
right.
I get a
Definitely.
lot of them just want a winning team, and they just what they have to realize is we have been a winning team many times.
Right.
You know, they just see these recent years and they're like, not so much. They're not a winning team, and then they look at the Super Bowl wins, the playoff thing, and they just think we don't win games. So
Right. That's very true. Well, I obviously have my hands full, Jazzy. I
yeah,
appreciate you coming out here, man.
yeah, I
We'll
appreciate you so much for
definitely.
having me, man.
Oh, no problem at all. We'll definitely have to click up and do this in the future. I can come through to your channel,
Yeah, for sure.
man. But as usual, guys, we will leave you with a who day, all day, every day, and especially on
Catch you on
Sunday.
Sunday. Yes, sir.
Sir.
And we're